United Nations Rights Chief Volker Turk insists that deporting people from occupied territory is strictly prohibited after U.S. President Donald Trump's proposal for the United States to take over Gaza and resettle its people. Turk said in a statement, quote, "It is crucial that we move towards the next phase of the ceasefire, to release all hostages and arbitrarily detained prisoners, end the war, and reconstruct Gaza, with full respect for international humanitarian law and international human rights law." The quote-unquote arbitrarily detained prisoners that he mentioned are Palestinian terrorists, some convicted of multiple life sentences for murdering Israelis. Similarly, NBC News referred to Palestinian terrorists as Palestinian hostages, while the New York Times called the Israeli hostages soldiers and the Palestinian terrorists released by Israel merely Palestinians. Speaking of these Palestinian terrorists, a second one in an Israeli prison has now refused to leave the prison and insisted he wanted to remain a prisoner rather than go back to Hamas's Gaza. Only in this part of the world is a jihadist enclave like Gaza less appealing than a prison in Israel. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres declined to renew the contract of UN Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide because she did not label Israel's war against Hamas a genocide. In an exclusive interview with Airmail, Alice Weremu Nderitu said, quote, "I was hounded day in, day out. Bullied, hounded, with protection from nobody. It's instructive that this never happened for any other war. Not for Ukraine, not for Sudan, not for the Democratic Republic of the Congo, not for Myanmar. The focus was always Israel. This was a war," she added. "Palestinians were killing Israelis. Israelis were killing Palestinians. It needs to be treated like other wars. In other wars, we don't run and take one side, and then keep going on and on about that one side. By taking one side, condemning it every day, you completely lose the essence of what the UN was created for. You don't say, in yet another signal that America's Democratic Party is becoming increasingly hostile to Jews in Israel, U.S. Senate Democrats blocked a Republican effort to advance legislation sanctioning the International Criminal Court over the arrest warrants it issued against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. The 54-45 vote result means that the Democrats will be able to continue filibustering the legislation and will likely require Republicans to resume negotiations with the Democrats aimed at reaching a compromise on the matter, one that, at the very least, will likely require tweaking the legislation that already passed the Republican-led House. Of course, because nothing says standing up for democracy like protecting a court that happily ignores Hamas war crimes, while going after the only democracy in the Middle East. But don't worry, I'm sure the Democrats will get around to condemning terrorists any day now, right after they finish lecturing Israel on proportionality. Irish President Michael D. Higgins hijacked International Holocaust Remembrance Day to criticize Israel's conduct in Gaza. Higgins' speech at Ireland's Holocaust Memorial Day ceremony focused on the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza and praised the, quote, long overdue ceasefire in the Palestinian enclave, leading some to walk out of the room in protest. Appearing to draw a line between the murder of 6 million Jews during the Holocaust and the war in Gaza, Higgins said, quote, when wars and conflicts become accepted or presented as seemingly unending, humanity is a loser. For good measure, he added in the debunked Gaza famine blood libel, a blood libel at a Holocaust memorial, and was begged by the tiny Irish Jewish community not to attend and defile this event. Higgins added, quote, war is not the natural condition of humanity. Cooperation is. Someone should tell him to contact the folks at Masterclass so he can give us a lesson on the lost art of cooperation with Islamist maniacs. A senior member of the Lebanese armed forces has been leaking sensitive intelligence information to Hezbollah operatives amid the tenuous ceasefire agreement with Israel. Citing unnamed intelligence sources, the report alleged that Suhail Bahij Garb, the chief of military intelligence for southern Lebanon, was passing information to Hezbollah from inside a security control room operated by United States, French, and UN officials tasked with overseeing the ceasefire between Israel and the Iran-backed terror group. According to the report, Garb's presence in the security control room was authorized after pressure from senior Hezbollah commander Wafik Safa, who survived an Israeli assassination attempt in October 2024. The Times said that Garb is not the only Lebanese military official to have leaked information to Hezbollah. Citing an international intelligence report, the UK news outlet asserts that dozens of officers have assisted Hezbollah, including by alerting the group to imminent raids, thereby giving operatives time to flee the area. Thankfully, we now have another shining example of why Israel should totally trust international oversight and rely on ceasefires brokered by the same folks who think Hezbollah is just a political movement with an armed wing. But let's not get too carried away just yet. The UN will probably launch a thoroughly unbiased investigation and conclude that Israel is the real problem here. In other news, a new documentary featuring Peter Gallo, a former UN fraud investigator, has Gallo saying, and I quote, "The UN is the envy of the mafia." In a bid to tackle a massive surge in anti-Semitism, since October 7th, Australia passed tough anti-hate crime laws this week, including mandatory minimum sentences for terror offenses and displaying hate symbols. The laws will impose minimum jail sentences between 12 months for less serious hate crimes, such as giving a Nazi salute in public, and 6 years for those found guilty of terrorism offenses. Recent months have seen an escalation of attacks on synagogues, buildings, and cars of Jewish community members across the country, including the discovery of a caravan laden with explosives with a list of Jewish targets in Sydney. It's reassuring to see that Australia has finally decided that maybe blatant Jew hatred and literal terrorism should come with consequences. Only took a massive anti-Semitic surge to get there, and certainly the mainstream media will still find a way to explain how these laws are somehow problematic and disproportionately impact pro-Palestinian activists. An Al Jazeera interview of a Palestinian returning to northern Gaza was widely shared after the reporter cut off the man once he started criticizing Hamas. The man can be heard telling the Al Jazeera reporter that Hamas allowed thieves to loot his house before being cut off. It is one of a growing number of clips showing reporters from the Qatar-backed network blocking the dissemination of voices critical of Hamas. Here's something Al Jazeera won't tell you, though. Following U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement earlier this week of his plan to relocate residents of the Gaza Strip, a document seized by the IDF shows that Hamas sees the emigration of young Gazans as a serious threat to Hamas's power, since this population forms the nucleus of the terror group's strength. The document, titled "Young People Chasing an Illusion," reveals how the terror group attempted to combat this trend through religious and nationalist rhetoric, portraying emigration as a betrayal of Islamic values and the Palestinian struggle. A survey showed that 44% of young people in Gaza have considered emigrating, mainly for economic reasons. In the document, Hamas warns young people against the, quote, illusion of an easy life in foreign countries, placing particular emphasis on the dangers of emigration for those involved in jihadist activities, and describing them as a, quote, precious treasure that could fall into the hands of foreign intelligence agencies. The central message is that emigration, even if it brings economic prosperity, constitutes a betrayal of the national struggle and a grave religious sin, with consequences that will be felt, quote, in this world and the next. The authors of the document specifically warn against marriages with foreign women, referred to as barbarians in the text, which could lead to the rise of a generation of children disconnected from their cultural and national roots. Naturally, Hamas, the benevolent rulers of Gaza, is so committed to their people that they'd rather keep them trapped in misery than risk losing their human shields. But hey, at least they're protecting the world from the grave threat of mixed marriages. The U.S. apparel shop University Tees struggled with whether they should cancel an order placed by the University of Maryland Students for Justice in Palestine Club. The sweater has Free Palestine on the front and a Gaza-style flag with the same type of inverted red triangle that political prisoners in the Holocaust wore, except reclaimed as Palestinian warrior symbol with the addition of watermelon seeds. January 30th was originally going to be the last date available to order these items. However, on January 26th, a parent reached out to the clothing shop to express concern with the design and how it is viewed as a hate symbol by Jewish students and parents. The clothing shop initially gave a milquetoast response on January 26th. Quote, "We do not turn away clients or organizations based on their beliefs. In this case, Students for Justice in Palestine is a registered organization at the University of Maryland, and the shirt design has been fully approved by the school." That response was then posted to a popular Jewish Facebook forum, leading to dozens of parents in the forum posting their emails to the clothing shop and expressing their concerns about University of Maryland faculty, staff, and students. Parents bombarded University Tees with screenshots of their emails to the store and to the University of Maryland. Within about 2 hours, the University Tees site changed course by taking down their order page for the Students for Justice in Palestine sweaters. In another reminder to not mess with the Jews.